Welcome to another episode of the Hot Seat Pod, brought to you by the Run the Play Network. I'm your host, Anthony. Solo episode once again. As you guys know, Will's not going to be here for a while. We're going to be stopping episodes shortly after the Super Bowl. But for now, we have banger after banger after banger for you on this NFL side. Obviously, if you're a fan of the channel, we had no NBA this week. Power went out. You would have known that if you followed us on Instagram. Click the link in the description for that. But today, we're going to be going over a preview of this Eagles versus Chiefs Super Bowl, talking about the games this weekend and how they kind of apply to what we're going to see in the Super Bowl. So let's get straight into it, man. Let's talk about the Eagles versus Commanders. That game, phenomenal game, even though it was a blowout. The Commanders started that game off throwing the ball a lot, trying to convert fourth downs early on in that game, which is fine, which is interesting. I think it's crazy, though, because the purpose of this obviously was to keep the ball. Whoa. That was bad.
I'm keeping that in.
This is my video. To keep the ball out of Saquon Barkley's hands, and it didn't really work out the way that they planned. They ended up taking the kick, and Saquon ran for a 60-yard touchdown the next play. I think they wanted Jalen Hurts to beat them, and even though Saquon did make a lot of plays and had 3 touchdowns in this game, Jalen Hurts definitely beat them, man. He played lights out. He played perfect. No turnovers for the guy. He just went out there and balled versus Commanders defense that looked pretty decent up against Detroit. It's kind of interesting to think about. Nick Sirianni now, in his last 3 seasons, is 39-12 as the Eagles head coach. The Eagles also put up 55 points in this game, which is the most points in any conference championship game in the history of the NFL. It's pretty crazy, man. They played great. I think if you get a game like this out of Jalen Hurts and Saquon, there's really nothing you could do to beat this team whatsoever. Let's go to Chiefs-Bills, though. This was a very interesting game, to say the least. There was conversations about the refs that I didn't really love. I feel like this refs narrative thing is kind of getting out of hand. If you go through and rewatch a game and look play for a flag, you're going to find flags. Like, that's just what it is. You could do the same thing if you did it the other way around for the Bills. I guarantee you could find flags if you did it that way. 1,000 likes on this video and we'll go through and do it because that's just what it is. But that Josh Allen first down play was like the most obvious social grab on Twitter ever for these big accounts to just farm tweets, and so many people gave into it, and it's so sad because the camera angle they showed, like, Chris Jones was blocking the play. I believe it was Chris Jones was blocking the play, so you couldn't see if the ball crossed the line. It looked like it, but if you look at it from the other way, from the angle that the ref called it short, he did not cross the plane, bro. He didn't. His helmet did. The ball didn't. It was social farming. Go look up the clip if you don't believe me. Like, it's just kind of crazy what social media can do. Like, I don't know why we're seeing so much NFL propaganda, but anyone that tells you this Chiefs team isn't legit, they're not really watching football, man. I mean, they are an elite team for sure. Sure, maybe they're not the old Chiefs or what the Patriots were, but they're an elite team, especially for the standard that the NFL is in right now. There's so much parity in the league, and there's so many elite teams. If you look at the Ravens and the Bills and the Chiefs on their side of the conference, and then on the other side, you look at the Lions, Vikings, and Eagles, like, those teams were all very legitimate teams that could have won a Super Bowl. I know there was a lot of questions about the Vikings, but if it was flipped and Sam Darnold hooped those weeks the way that he was during the regular season, that team very well is a Super Bowl team, Super Bowl contender. He just played like shit, if we're being honest. Same thing for the Lions. If their defense wasn't hurt, that team is very good. But the Chiefs, despite that, finished as the number 1 team, not in their conference, the number 1 team in the NFL, because they have been that good this season. I know they're not winning by a lot of scores. And I don't think there's some sort of generational elite team. But for the standard of the NFL, which has 6 very good teams, this team was the best. Like, that's just what it is. Let's talk about the game, though. What pissed me off in this game the most was after the game, the owner shouted out Mahomes, Kelce, and then he added the rest of the team. Travis Kelce had 2 catches for 19 yards. Why is he getting a shout-out over a Chris Jones, over a McDuffie? He had 2 catches for 19 yards. I mean, Xavier Worthy had a better game than him. And he's a rookie. Like, it's just, I get it. I get he's dating Taylor Swift. He's one of the biggest stars of the NFL, but I don't know why we have to push narratives. I get he's trying to sell jerseys, but Travis Kelce is not a top 5 Chief, and I put a list together. Even if you don't think like my first 5 are better, there's probably 8 Chiefs you can make an argument for. Patrick Mahomes, clear-cut number 1. Chris Jones, clear-cut number 2. Some other names I have on here: George Karlaftis, Creed Humphrey, Rashee Rice, healthy, is much better than Travis Kelce. Like, the numbers will back that up. At this point in his career, we're not talking all time. We're talking about right now as a Chief in the year of 2025. Healthy Rashee Rice is better. Trent McDuffie, Nick Bolton. Like, all those guys had better games, better playoff runs, and have been better players at the end of the day. The Bills were solid all year, and I'm going to give them that. As someone who hasn't been a fan of the Bills, they are a solid roster all around. They're one of the most deep rosters, I want to say. At every level, they have decent guys. They don't have a lot of superstars, but they have a lot of players that aren't going to make too many mistakes. This team is very, very good, and they're a couple superstars away from this team having a real Super Bowl run. But some stats I saw: Josh Allen has never won a road playoff game. That's questionable. I know the Bills, it's a franchise, it's a team sport. The Bills haven't won with Josh Allen as their quarterback, but Josh Allen's part of that, man. The Bills traded the pick for Mahomes, and they traded the pick for Xavier Worthy. That's funny, man. It's just funny to look at, like, those two dudes are the dudes that kicked the Buffalo Bills' ass when it came to the playoffs. It was a good game for sure. It was a war. It's so fun to watch. It's a battle. Some questionable play calls by Joe Brady, I feel like, are what ended up costing the Bills. When you're going against one of the greatest coaches and greatest players of all time, like, you have to be spot on with your play calls, and that's really what ended up screwing them. But yeah, all in all, it was a great game, great watch. We get the Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl that, if you watched my previous video, was the most marketable Super Bowl outcome that I had. So let's talk about it. Let's go into the Super Bowl preview. But before we go into that, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Man, okay, LeBron hit my parlay. Let's get it.
Oh, shit, he hit it?
Yeah, bro. Look at this.
I won $200. I tailed your parlay.
How the heck did you win $200?
I used Boom Fantasy. I used their pick and spin, spun the wheel, got 10 times my money.
Bro, you got to hook me up.
If you use code RTP, you could get a risk-free bet up to $100. Let's get back to the video. Again, Boom Fantasy, if you guys want to bet on the Super Bowl, that's the place to do it. Eagles versus Chiefs. At the time of recording, the Chiefs opened up at a -2 favorite and a 49.5 total. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'm smashing that total. But we have a short on our channel looking at the last Super Bowl and some things that happened in the last Super Bowl. But let me tell you guys just a couple of things in case you haven't seen that short. Mahomes only threw the ball 27 times in that game, but he had 3 total touchdowns. Hurts threw for 300 yards, but only 1 touchdown through the air. He had 3 more touchdowns on the ground, tied the Super Bowl record with Terrell Davis. Pacheco was a monster in that game. He had 5 yards per carry. Philly was up 10 points in the second half during that game, and the Chiefs recovered a fumble for a touchdown in that game. A lot went the Eagles' way. A lot went the Chiefs' way. But I think there's definitely a world where this swings, and this three-peat conversation isn't even real because Philly beats them. Both teams are known. I feel like this season, the key to their success sure has been the offense, sure has been the defense, sure has been the coaching, all that. Great coaching matchup. But I feel like home field advantage is a huge thing that both these teams benefited from. And both these teams are pretty much equidistant from where the Super Bowl is going to be played. Philly is a 17-hour drive. Kansas is a 14-hour drive. I don't know how much that's going to matter. I know Chiefs fans and Philly fans are two of the craziest fan bases, so they're both going to be busting the mission for sure. We're going to see a lot of red and green there. Also, though, like if you really think about it, the Super Bowl is a lot of people that work for like Coke and Pepsi and all that going to the game and watching their commercials, and it's just like a big marketing thing. I wish it was more fans in there, but that's out of the question. And then another thing that happens with this home field advantage is weather. Both these teams are very good at playing in the cold. Now they're going to be playing in a dome. It could open up a lot of things. Mahomes, I think, could have a bigger game because of it. Saquon could have a bigger game because of it. A lot could be different because they're playing in a dome and there's no severe weather to worry about. I know if you guys watched the games this weekend, it didn't look crazy, but I mean, those teams were playing I believe, in between 30 and 40-degree weather. So that's a lot harder than playing in a dome with an air conditioning unit that you can set the temperature to. It's going to be interesting. Let's talk about the game. Okay, let's talk about the game. I think it's going to be a Jalen Hurts game. I know I said Saquon could have a big game because of the weather, and Saquon could always have a big game. But I feel like the Chiefs are one of the few teams that have a player at each position where they could make it difficult on Saquon. Saquon's great at working out of difficult situations, but I think it's going to be a little extra hard this weekend when he has to backline Nick Bolton. Before he gets to Nick Bolton, he has to figure out how to get through a Chris Jones if he wants to go down the middle, or a Karlaftis on the outside. They're going to have to make Jalen Hurts throw the ball. And I mean, last time they played, Jalen Hurts threw for 300 yards. I think it's going to have to be a Jalen Hurts game for them to win the Super Bowl, though. Jalen Hurts had a huge game against Washington this week, but the Chiefs secondary is a lot better than Marshawn Lattimore, and they're going to make it a lot more difficult on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith to go out there and have these big game, big plays that maybe the Eagles are hoping for. I think Jalen Hurts could have a big game rushing the ball again. Maybe he breaks his own Super Bowl rushing touchdown record, but I think he's definitely going to have a big game on the ground this week. I think he could have a big game in the air potentially. Not this week, during the Super Bowl. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting Super Bowl. I think the Chiefs are going to have problems against the Eagles defense because the Eagles defense as a unit is probably the best unit in this game. In my personal opinion, it's the Eagles defense and the Eagles offense as units are the two best units probably in this game. But the Eagles defense specifically, because they just have so much to make plays. Their problem is their coverage linebackers. But as far as pass rush and secondary goes, they're going to do a great job at messing up Mahomes. Mahomes has faced one of the most pressures all season, so he can handle that. But with that secondary, it could definitely make things a little bit interesting. I think Travis Kelce is going to have a big game, though, because like I said, their coverage linebackers aren't great, and you can't really put a Gardner Johnson or a Reed Blankenship on a Travis Kelce. I don't think that's going to work. I don't think they're strong enough. I don't think they have the ability to slow him down the way that you might hope for. So it's going to be a Travis Kelce game, and I'm projecting a Jalen Hurts game as well. Mahomes, obviously, one of the greatest ever, but I think there's going to be a lot of screen passes this game. I think with the quick pressure coming at him, they're going to want Xavier Worthy, Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, Hollywood Brown to make these huge breakaway plays. So maybe stay away from like DeAndre Hopkins if you plan on betting this game. But I think the underneath stuff is going to be the key to the Chiefs' victory. I'm going with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I think roster-wise, the Eagles are better, but the Chiefs can cover the receivers. The Chiefs can stop the run. The Chiefs match up better, but the Eagles' roster is better, if that makes sense, which it should. You're not an idiot. Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. My biggest problem with the Eagles all year was that I feel like they let up a lot. When they're up, they let up. And that's what I was so glad to see versus the Commanders, because they didn't let up at all. But versus the Packers, versus the Rams, like there's a universe where they lose because they let up, and the Rams could have scored and won the game. The Packers could have scored and won the game. It's crazy how, like, if the Eagles do that versus the Chiefs, the Eagles are losing that game. Like, Mahomes is not going to make mistakes to where they could blow the game, because Mahomes in his last 9 playoffs games has only thrown 1 interception. Tom Brady's never had a stretch like that over his career. However, Jalen Hurts, although he's only played in 7 games over his career in the playoffs, he's only thrown 1 interception. So if he has 2 more games, he's going to look good. But right now, yeah, I'm leaning towards the Chiefs. I just think they're a better matchup. I think there's a lot going for them. I think they're hot right now. I think the Eagles are hot too. I think we're in for a great Super Bowl. I'm smashing that over because both these teams really don't make any mistakes. So we're going to have perfect drive. They're going to go over for sure. But you guys let me know at home, what bets are you taking? What team are you picking? Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, but most importantly, run the play.